Well, good afternoon, Bill. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. It is wonderful to see so many of you here today. I want to thank Washington and Oregon Sea Grant for hosting this program, and Bill for the introduction, and for everybody joining us today. From the University of Washington to the Nature Conservancy and the National Working Waterfronts Network, we really have a great group here at this symposium. I'm glad to be able to come by and join you for a few minutes. It has been a very busy few weeks back in Washington, D.C., so I am very glad to be back in what we call the better Washington to have a chance to talk with all of you. As Bill mentioned, I became chair of the Senate Budget Committee this Congress, and it's been an incredible opportunity and a tremendous challenge. In fact, a few weeks ago, a reporter asked me what it was like to try and pass a budget with such a diverse group of senators, and I thought back to my experience teaching preschool, and I said to her, you know, if you can get a class full of 4-year-olds to all sit down at the same time and sing the same song, you can do just about anything. In a lot of ways, that's exactly what my job was exactly like. But somehow, last week, we did get everybody to sing that same song and pass the first Senate budget in 4 years. Now, the Senate budget alone, of course, doesn't solve all our problems. It is a very important step forward now for us to keep our economy growing and address our nation's long-term fiscal challenges. Our economy is fragile, so our budget invests in infrastructure and jobs that can support our families and help make our communities stronger. And importantly, our budget that passed replaces the damaging cuts from sequestration that are really hurting our economy and are going to continue to hurt it. Because for far too long, I think I share the frustration of everybody, we have just been lurching from crisis to crisis, and it has been having a real impact on businesses across our state. So this budget is an important step in getting to an end process on that and getting us back on track to manage efficiently and effectively. As all of you know, yeah, you can applaud that, believe me. As all of you know, back in Washington, D.C., too often today the debate comes down to my way or the highway. We often hear that deficit reduction should be done only by spending cuts, or on the other side, only by revenue. But the fact is that every credible expert on the budget challenges we face has said we need the right balance of both cuts and revenue, as well as investments in our immediate economic growth. So that's really what we focused on in our Senate budget. Now, in the coming weeks, I'll be working with my colleagues from both sides of the aisle and both sides of the Capitol to get everyone to sing together on the final budget process and the approach that we need to take. You know, when I took this on, I realized that a lot of budget chairs in the past really talked about budget as a collection of spreadsheets and graphs. So when I came onto the committee, I made sure that our budget really was about something more, because I believe budgets are really a reflection of our values and our priorities in this country. And those values and priorities that I brought to this budget came straight from people like all of you in this room and in communities across Washington State. When I told the other members of my committee that we needed to invest in infrastructure, it wasn't just about filling in a line on a spreadsheet. It was about creating jobs and strengthening our communities like the ones along the coastline that I represent. Those communities' values are rooted in hard work and investing in the industries and their economy and their future. And everyone here, from business leaders to academics to environmental leaders, knows our shorelines and our waterways are the backbone of Washington State's economy, and protecting them is vital to our region's future. As we've worked to develop the Puget Sound and the Columbia River ports, we've really harnessed the power of our waterways to help drive our economy. And because of the world-class maritime industry and water infrastructure that has been developed here, companies from around the globe want to do business here in Washington State. You heard Bill just talk about a number of them. From wheat, timber exports, aerospace manufacturing, Our waterfronts make Washington State a gateway to global commerce, and it shows. Washington State is the most trade-dependent state in the nation. So we have made a lot of great strides to expand our economy through our waterfronts, but we have to protect that infrastructure and resources now that so many jobs depend on. And it is not only businesses that rely on our waterfronts. Our deep water ports are unique. They're invaluable resources that allow Washington State to be the home of crucial military installations. Bremerton, Bangor, our natural deepwater port in Everett, these are a wealth of natural resources that have made our towns home to bustling military communities. And as our nation's security interests shift now to the Pacific, our ports will only grow busier and the Northwest water infrastructure will be more important than ever. Beyond the strategic and economic importance of these ports and waterways that power our economy, our ties to the water are more than just dollars and cents. The maritime industry is an important part of who we are. For generations, it's provided jobs that are made for Washingtonians, hardworking, blue-collar people that care about their communities and aren't afraid of a little rain. So, in my job, representing all of you and these vital industries in the Senate, I know exactly how important it is to fight for our waterfronts and our way of life. And when it comes to fighting for Washington's maritime industry in Congress, there is no better place to start than the Jones Act. Now, I know most of you are familiar with the legislation. It's actually named for Senator Wesley Jones from Washington State many years ago. Some of you may remember a few years back the Jones Act being really threatened in the aftermath of that awful Deepwater Horizon oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. At that time, there was a real rush to get something done in Washington, D.C., to write some kind of legislation in response to that, and to legislate oil rig policy and change liability. So the House of Representatives really fast passed something, and then I started hearing from people like all of you in this room from the maritime industry. And I learned very quickly, trust me, you did really well getting your message across, that the new legislation that the House had passed would actually drastically change the Jones Act and the Limitation on Liability Act and other laws that the maritime industry really has built over the past century. So I got involved, and when other groups wanted to make wholesale changes to the Jones Act, by the way, without any hearing or public debate, I didn't budge. And because of all of your hard work and you're really helping us understand the issues and fight for them, we said no, and we won. So you make a difference when your voices are heard. Now, you know, there are benefits to sticking around in the Senate for a long time, and one of them is that you really get to work on the issues that mean a lot to you. For me, one of those is working for our commercial fishermen, who are some of our most important economic drivers, whose seafood, as you know, is distributed now to places all over the world. And after staying around for a while, I have, as you heard from Bill, chair of the Appropriations Subcommittee that oversees transportation. By chairing that subcommittee, I've been able to fight very hard for the Small Shipyards Grants Program, which, by the way, was originally written by two champions of the maritime industry, Senator Ted Stevens from Alaska and Senator Danny Inouye of Hawaii. Using those grants, our shipyards up and down our coastline, from Bellingham to Tacoma, have invested in infrastructure to help our businesses grow and create jobs in waterfront communities. But for all of our successes, we still have a lot of challenges ahead of us. Here in Washington State, we have to continue learning from our past mistakes by understanding that economic prosperity along our waterfronts has to go hand in hand with responsible environmental stewardship. We have to continue our commitment to clean up Superfund sites that contaminate our communities from Tacoma to the Duwamish. We have to strengthen our partnerships with local tribes who are co-managers of our abundant seafood resources. And in Washington, D.C., we have to continue working to make adjustments to that harbor maintenance tax for our major ports that don't benefit from that trust fund. That harbor maintenance tax puts a lot of our ports at a real disadvantage, and it actually diverts cargo that should go through our state. So I want you all to know I'm working very hard and I'm committing to fix that problem, and your help and your support and work on that has really made a difference, and I appreciate it. So just let me say, this industry is strong, but there is a lot of work to do, and that's why this symposium is really important, both for us here in Washington State and in Washington, D.C. We've got to make sure here that our maritime industries continue to lead our economy. It is that critical. So I really appreciate all of you coming here, the tremendous work you do, and I'm looking forward to hearing the outcomes of this conference. So thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of it today. And Bill, thank you again.